Hi everyone, I'm the plant propagator and welcome to my channel. Today I want to take you on a tour of an orchid mounting trip that I took to a friend's golf course. This is an orchid growing friend, and the people that were on this expedition, that were on this trip, are members of BOING, which is Breeding Orchids by Intelligent but Naive Growers. We're part of the Gulf Coast Orchid Alliance, which is a local American Orchid Society affiliated orchid group. And I've shared with you previously Burlap Phals and Burlap Dens, and I deflasked a bunch of Burlap Phals and Burlap Dens. They were ready to go. They needed to be mounted on trees, and I want to share with you some of that experience. So this was a trip that we took, like I said, to a golf course, and the member that lives at the golf course has been mounting orchids for years in various trees, and she's got, unlike me, that has a very limited space. She has her home, and she has orchids mounted, in her pool cage and mounted on the trees around her house. But she also has access to the golf course and the many trees associated with that golf course. So we took a trip throughout there. We had, I don't know, probably around, I would guess, 35 to 50 orchids that we were mounting in the trees around her golf course community, and and there were different people doing mountings. There were different approaches to the mountings, and it was overall a fun day. It was a hot day, so we met at about 6 o'clock, but the sun was shining. It was warm. The bugs were out there. We had bug repellent on, but it didn't matter. So if you see people in the videos shaking their heads or swatting, it's because there were a lot of bugs around. But it was fun anyway. So the interesting thing about that is that I've been mounting these are Burlap Phals here. I've been mounting these Phalaenopsis that I initially deflasked directly onto burlap. I've been mounting those on trees around my house, but I'm limited by space. So I've had a couple of instances where people want to put them on their property, and this was the largest mounting of Burlap Phals that I've done, and I want to see how they look, how they survive in the real world. These Burlap Phals have been they get irrigated. I take care of them. These other ones are just out in the trees with no irrigation, just at a golf course. It is rainy season here in Southwest Florida, but I want to see how they do. So I want to expose them to the real world and see how they proliferate and how they grow. So let me show you this one first. So this Burlap Phal right here has been doing really well. The roots are growing out, they're attaching to the tree, and they're just, this is an approach that works really good. So as the phals grow, the roots spread out at the bottom of the containers. They grow through the burlap, and the idea, again, and you'll see this from the video, is the roots are really pretty long, and they stretch out along the periphery of the burlap. And the idea is to see how they attach to the trees in these environments where they don't get irrigated 3 days a week. And the same thing with the Burlap Dens. So the Burlap Dens are on trees over there, and I mount them here because most of the trees that I have in my yard are palm trees. So at the golf course there were a variety of different trees. There were palm trees. There are live oaks, which have really nice bark on the live oaks, and what that does is that creates a really good opportunity for the roots to grab onto this really rough bark on these trees. So we run around. We took golf carts around, and there was a caravan of 5 golf carts, and we went around as a group to different locations and mounted the Burlap Phals and Burlap Dens. But we also mounted other other seedlings. So these are Certipodium punctatum. So you'll see in the video Certipodium punctatum that we mounted. We also mounted Guarianthe skinneri or skinneri that were from pots, and those were just placed right on the trees. And we placed the Certipodiums, I should say, in the crotch of the trees. That's what I'm told is going to work best for the Certipodium. So we found the appropriate places to plant those. And so we went out and we had fun, but it was warm and it was buggy, and I want to share the video with you. I also want to mention that Emily was my videographer, and I appreciate her being willing to shoot videos of the overall process. We mounted, I should say, one last thing I wanted to say is the mountings were done with jute, which is a natural fiber jute rope, very thin, and that's wrapped around the trees, and the orchids are placed in there. And we also used rubber bands, so there's two different procedures. The first person that you'll see mounting the orchids is the one that is the member of that lives in that golf course community, and she is responsible for the amazing orchids that you'll see at the end of the video today that already are in trees. And there's a lot. She's mounted a lot of orchids over the years, and she is an orchid mounting expert. And she prefers to use the jute, the twine, and that works well for her. It degrades and falls apart. The rubber bands are what I prefer. It's easier to do, but it's a little bit of a different approach. So you'll see both approaches. The beginning of the video, you'll see us mounting the orchids, most of the different members mounting the orchids on the tree. And that at the end of the video, you'll see some of the orchids that happen to be blooming as we were going through this golf course community. And we stopped to collect some video of that. All right, so I hope you enjoy the tour of the golf course and the orchid mounting experience that I wanted to share with you today. Okay, here we go. So we are the second golf cart in this golf cart caravan of 5, and we actually didn't estimate the number of people that would be there. So this guy, I don't know if he had to or he got to ride on the back of this golf cart. Seemed like fun. He was good with it. One other thing, you can see the pond off on the left here, and there was a gator in that pond, and I asked this person who lives on the community, I said, was that a real gator? Because sometimes they just put fake ones in the ponds around here. And she said, no, that's real. There's one in every pond, which is like, yikes. She said it was a small one, but it looked big to me. Anyway, this is the person who lives at the golf course community, and she here is mounting a Burlap Phals. So you can see this in the tree. The tree is an oak tree. It's a live oak, and you can see the roughness of the bark, and the orchids just love grabbing onto this. But she's putting this Burlap Phal up in the tree with jute, and so she makes a knot and then pulls back on it and fastens it to the tree. The jute does expand a little bit in the rain, but it holds really well, and then it degrades. This is somebody doing a rubber band mounting. So these are the 7 to 8 inch rubber bands that I use, and I cut them, and what we're doing right now is looking for an appropriate spot to mount this Burlap Phal. And so she's reaching up there and placing tying the rubber bands around there twice. I should also mention that we had to mount these orchids up pretty high because of the deer population in this golf course community, and we actually saw quite a few deer as we were driving around in the golf cart. So they have to be, and they do like They like the dendrobiums more, I think, than the phals, but they like the phals too. So the idea here, again, is to mount them up high. Right now I'm trying to figure out what orientation we should use for the burlap phals. And you put the rubber bands up in the tree, spread them apart a little bit so that you could easily just kind of place the burlap on the top part and the bottom, place the rubber bands over the burlap and the top and the bottom of it. And this shows how easy it is. The difficult thing is that when your hands are wet, because the burlap is wet, trying to grab the rubber bands that are around the tree. It depends on how smooth the bark is. And this palm tree it's pretty smooth bark, but this is all there is to it, is to pull the rubber bands and place them over the top and bottom part of the burlap, and you can see how they're mounted, and you can even see some roots on this and how hopefully they will grow out into the tree. So here's another person, and I should say that this person, you can't tell, she likes to climb trees. So she was up, she's resting on one of the palm limbs. She's not standing, and she's probably a couple of feet above the ground, just where she is, where she's sitting in this palm tree, or in this group of palm trees. And again, figuring out the orientation, placing, mounting these guys up here, and just put a rubber band on the top, on the bottom, and then put a rubber band on the top, and they are mounted in place. The other thing, just so you notice, is that if you may be able to hear some background pinging and pogging. And so there's pickleball courts that are all around, at least in this area. So this is off of a parking lot. All the live oaks and the palms off of a parking lot. And you should be able to hear the pinging of pickleball going on here. A lot of active pickleball players here. This is a burlap den that is mounted in this oak tree. And then right next to it, there was a certipodium that was mounted in that tree. This is another situation. This is with the jute, and look at the massive roots on these burlap phals. You can see how they're just there, and these were only deflasked about 6 weeks ago, so I think probably 4 weeks is a good time. 6 weeks was a little long for these guys to be in here, but look at the massive root system on these plants. And again, the idea is to get them in the trees and in the bark as good as possible. This is another situation where we've got three folks mounting, and then you can see the tennis and pickleball in the background. But the ladder that we had to use to get far enough up in the tree in order to keep these out of the reach of the deer. She is about to mount a Certipodium punctanum, a cigar orchid, up pretty high in the tree. And again, what you try to do with the Certipodiums is get up pretty high, and you have to also put the plant in the crotch of the tree where those two limbs come together. It's really moist down in there, and it seems to be the Certipodiums really like, I guess, that extra moisture and nutrition. Now these guys will get fairly large, and you just find a good place for them. It's secure, so I think we're good with the mounting of the Certipodium. Again, not much to this, and they're off on their own with the elements, and we'll see how they do. This is a guy, he spent a lot of time up in the ladder in the tree, and he's mounting yet another one up in this tree. Now we're going to take a look at some of the orchids that the person who lives on the golf course has mounted these over the years. So on the left is a bunch of phals, one of them which is blooming. There's a lot of plants really everywhere, but there are so many trees, as you can see here, that she's been busy for many years mounting, and there's plenty of room for yet more orchids to be placed in these trees. These are cabbage palms. These are natives. And these are nice because you can put them in the petio base, the boot of the tree, and you can see this massive dendrobium that was planted a few years ago. Beautiful flowers on this tree, and you can see how loaded this is. And when you look at this, it's kind of not fair that I live in a community that, or in an area that you can do this, but these were shoved up in the trees in the right place. You have to select the right area. A nice foul right here. You have to select the right area, but once these things catch on, I think that might have been an oncidium there, I'm not even sure, but many of the different orchids, if you find the right space in the tree, the right side of the tree, you know, and you can see there's ferns growing, there are other types of epiphytes growing in the tree, but you can see if you have the right environment, these guys do well on their own. Another beautiful dendrobium here, but look at the plant itself is massive, and when it gets to this point, at this level of maturity, they just go crazy with blooms. Do they smell good? All right, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the tour. I hope that you appreciate what was done, and I hope to share the results with you. I was told that we're going to hear back from these people, from the person who lives on the community. She's going to update me on how the orchids survive. Again, these are under different conditions from those that exist in my small garden and my small house here. So we'll see how that goes over time, and I'll report back to you if they do well. Again, it's rainy. Most days it rains here, so they should do okay. So as long as they, you know, grab on and survive and initially survive, I think that they'll do well, and I think they're going to do well anyway. Orchids are tough. They really, you know, you think they're delicate, but they're not. These guys are really tough. Okay, again, I hope you enjoyed my video. If you did and you want to keep on seeing them, it would help me out if you could click on like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you're not already a subscriber. All right, that's all I have for today. Again, I hope you enjoyed it, and happy propagating.